Now I'm going to admit everyone. Ready? Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Going to let some folks continue to trickle in. Taylor, one thing that you could help with is admitting people as they continue to come in. Thank you. Hi, everyone. If you're just coming in, we're going to start in 1 minute. Conservancy team, you can see my slide in presentation mode, right? Yep. Okay, great.
Sure can.
Awesome. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Coastal Conservancy's latest funding webinar focused on our wildfire resilience program. We are recording this webinar today and we'll be posting it on our website. We will also email out our slides to the attendees. And first, to get us started, I'll introduce the Coastal Conservancy staff on this webinar today. I'm Evan Borgness-Sloan, our Deputy Executive Officer, and I'll hand it to Costula.
I'm Costula Villanos with the Central Coast Group as well as the Wildfire team.
And I'm Lily Allen with the North Coast Group.
So we will be doing this presentation today, and we also have Taylor Samuelson, who's our Public Information Officer, helping with any technical issues that pop up and any support. As we go through this presentation, please enter any questions you have in the Q&A. We will be monitoring it and responding to questions at the end. We should have enough time to cover all of the questions, but if we don't get to everyone's questions, we will be developing a Q&A document and posting that on our website with all of the answers to every question put in the Q&A. If you're having any technical difficulties, please let us know in the Q&A and we will try to help. We will be talking about the Coastal Conservancy's early funding allocation from the 2024 Climate Bond, also known as Prop 4, focused on wildfire via AB 100. We will then explain the grant application process and how to work with us to apply for funding for projects that fit within the Conservancy's objectives. The State Coastal Conservancy's vision is of a beautiful, restored, and accessible coast for current and future generations of Californians. We don't do any of this work alone. We act with others, all of you, to protect and restore and increase public access to the coast. In terms of our jurisdiction, the Coastal Conservancy works along the coast in the 9 San Francisco Bay Area counties in their entirety, in coastal draining watersheds, and in the jurisdiction of the Santa Ana River Conservancy. One of the most important tools guiding our work is our strategic plan. Our strategic plan from 2023 to 2027 lays out our vision, goals, and measurable objectives. Projects that we fund must help us accomplish the goals and objectives in our strategic plan. The first goal of our strategic plan, Goal 1, is prioritize equity. We do this by funding projects that directly benefit systemically excluded communities and include robust community engagement and workforce development. We also achieve this by funding projects that return power to tribes. Goal 2 in our strategic plan is Enjoy the Coast. Under this goal, we fund projects like our Explore the Coast grant program, our Coastal Stories grant program, projects that expand accessibility for people with disabilities, building trails, recreational facilities and amenities, enhancing piers and waterfronts, and increasing the ability of lower cost overnight accommodations, also known as our Explore the Coast overnight grant program. Goal 3 is Protect and Restore the Coast. We do this by funding projects that conserve land, restore or enhance habitats, protect and enhance working lands, or cut green tape to move restoration work forward more expeditiously. Our fourth goal, Goal 4, is our Climate Ready goal. This goal focuses on projects that help our coastal communities adapt to sea level rise, increase wildfire resilience, which we will be focusing on today, and providing multi-benefit nature-based climate adaptation. The 2024 Climate Bond, also known as Prop 4, was approved by voters in November of 2024 and provides $10 billion for natural resources and climate activities. The $10 billion is divided among program areas such as clean water, fire resilience, biodiversity, and coastal resilience. There is $1.5 billion for wildfire resilience overall. The Coastal Conservancy will receive almost $950 million for coastal resilience through the 2024 Climate Bond. This money is broken into several different program areas. A majority of the funding is for coastal flooding and coastal resilience. For wildfire resilience, the Conservancy is receiving $33.5 million. We will continue to work on wildfire resilience within our jurisdiction with this allocation of $33.5 million from the 2024 Climate Bond. With a high priority on forest management efforts in the wildland-urban interface and projects that incorporate workforce development designed to create career pathways for individuals from disadvantaged and vulnerable populations. We are not the only agency under the California Natural Resources Agency that will be receiving climate bonds for wildfire resilience. CAL FIRE will be receiving almost $588 million lumped for all programs. Cal OES's wildfire mitigation program will receive about $135 million. The Department of Conservation has a total of $235 million, which includes $185 million for their Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Grant Program. And then the Coastal Conservancy and many other conservancies have similar allocations from the Prop Bond, with Sierra Nevada Conservancy, Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, and Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy having $33.5 million like us, and then Tahoe Conservancy and San Diego River Conservancy receiving $25.5 million. For wildfire, we had originally anticipated around $5.2 million in fiscal year 25-26 based on the governor's January budget, but then AB 100 passed and was signed by the governor, which allocates nearly our entire wildfire allocation from the bond in the current fiscal year 24-25. With that, the Conservancy has received $30.9 million for our wildfire resilience program. The other conservancies similarly are receiving nearly their entire allocations in the current fiscal year as well. I also wanted to highlight that the 40% of the climate bonds funding must provide meaningful and direct benefits to disadvantaged communities, and 10% of those funds must provide benefits to severely disadvantaged communities. A disadvantaged community is a community with a median household income of less than 80% of the average area statewide median household income. A severely disadvantaged community is a community with a median household income of less than 60% of the area average or of the statewide median household income. That means that a total of $12.4 million of our 24-25 allocation will directly go towards disadvantaged communities or severely disadvantaged communities or projects that serve them. And now I will hand it over to Kastula.
Thanks, Evan. Since 2018, SCC has invested $70 million in projects throughout our jurisdiction. These have included vegetation management projects, as well as organizational capacity building projects, workforce development, planning such as community wildfire protection planning, and wildfire resilience regional priority planning. And we've also made investments in mapping, such as wildfire hazard and risk mapping and fine scale vegetation mapping. Moving forward, we are interested in funding implementation projects that have their environmental compliance completed. This could be done through the governor's March 1st proclamation or through other pathways. Specifically, CEQA must be complete for us to bring projects to our board. We will prioritize multi-benefit projects that include elements such as workforce development, tribal stewardship, good fire, and or benefit disadvantaged communities. Projects should implement an existing plan, such as community wildfire protection plans or regional priority plans, and we plan to fund large projects, both scale and in size, costing between $1 to $3 million, but these numbers are squishy and we have some flexibility there. Projects must benefit public and protected lands, and while a match isn't required, we prioritize projects that include funding, allowing our funds to go further. We do have flexibility with what we can fund, and eligible expenses can include equipment, salaries, prescribed fire, grazing, as well as training. This isn't a comprehensive list, but it does provide an overview of eligible expenses partners have asked about in the past. Just reach out to us if you have questions about eligible expenses you'd like to include. The next few slides will go over a couple of example projects we funded in the last few years that illustrate our funding priorities. The first one we'll discuss is the Tamiya Nation Cultural Fire Stewardship Program. Funds were granted to the Tamiya Nation to develop a native fire crew, equipping them with supplies and training, and allowing them to conduct fuel management and prescribed fires in Henry Co. State Park in Santa Clara County. This program is a multi-partner cooperative capacity building project. The Tamiya Nation's crew's growing expertise combines California Burn Boss certification qualifications with traditional, cultural, and indigenous knowledge. Moving into the future, the Tamiya Nation envisions that its crew would work as contractors to help fund their own work instead of relying on grant cycles indefinitely. The East Bay Regional Park District's biomass facility pilot program was a $1 million grant to the Park District to treat and process an 80-acre area of dense eucalyptus in Anthony Chabot Regional Park. A biochar carbonator was used to process the biomass on site, which reduced the wood volume by 90% and produced 500 tons of biochar, an excellent soil amendment. The project also included a feasibility study of biochar uses by the Park District, and lessons learned from the project were shared throughout the region and are still applied by the Park District. Ascot Hills Park is one of the few remaining contiguous open spaces in the heart of urban Los Angeles and connects to a number of nearby open spaces. As such, it serves as an important corridor for wildlife, including special status species. The Conservancy provided funding to Northeast Trees, Inc. to enhance at least 33 acres of habitat in the park through the removal of invasive plants and planting of native plants. The project includes employing a local youth crew to conduct the native planting. The native planting will be propagated on site at the park through a native plant nursery run by Northeast Trees. The local youth crew are hired and trained by habitat restoration ecologists and have an opportunity to work with local LA City and County Fire Department firefighters and CAL FIRE urban foresters, expanding their knowledge base and potentially creating a pipeline to future employment. The project also includes 10 to 12 community engagement events aimed to collaborate with, engage, and educate community members. The first appropriation to SCC will be received in July 2025 when the budget is signed. We are accepting applications now, and those applications are open on a rolling basis. Since we accept applications at any time, you don't have a deadline and you can submit when you're ready. Our board approves funding at 4 to 5 public meetings each year, and the first board meeting that we could possibly bring projects to with climate bond funds is September 2025, but it's more likely they would go to a November meeting. And I'm going to hand it over to Lily.
Thank you for that great information, Kostula. I'm going to talk about the nuts and bolts of our application and process. First off, who is eligible for Conservancy grants? Public agencies, including local, state, and federal, nonprofits, federally recognized tribal governments, and non-federally recognized tribes through a fiscal sponsor. There is no set minimum or maximum for our grants, but again, we expect the typical range to be between 1 and 3 million per project. Allowable project activities include implementation, such as bid documents and hiring contractors, construction and workforce development related to a project. Also, project-specific planning like feasibility, design, permitting, CEQA, and community engagement related to a project. We also fund equipment purchases. Next, I'll talk about project selection criteria. We select projects which are a good investment of state resources, helps accomplish our strategic plan, includes a serious effort to engage tribes, benefits will be sustained or resilient over the project lifespan, delivers multiple benefits and significant positive impact, was or will be planned with meaningful community engagement and a broad community support. I'm going to talk a little bit about the application process for SCC funds. First, we accept applications on what is called a rolling basis, as we mentioned earlier, which means you can submit an application at any time and you don't need to wait for a request for proposals. The first step we suggest is to email us and set up a pre-proposal meeting. We try really hard to keep our barriers low and have found that having a short meeting can help applicants better understand how their idea fits within our program. Next, applicants would need to submit a pre-application. We will review this application and determine project eligibility and funding availability within 60 days. The shorter pre-application form is designed to be more straightforward to complete, share high-level information on the proposed project before spending the time developing a full application. If a pre-application meets the Conservancy's eligibility criteria, there is available Conservancy funding for the project, and we determine the project will be competitive based on our project selection criteria, applicants will be invited to submit a full application. At this stage, Conservancy staff will provide feedback on the project that will help the grantee develop an application that meets our goals, objectives, and project selection criteria. You will then submit your application on your own timeline. There is no deadline for your application, but the sooner you get it in, the sooner we can consider your project for funding. Once your application is submitted, Conservancy staff will again respond within 60 days to whether a grant award will be recommended. If staff are going to recommend funding for the project, we will present the grant proposal at a public board meeting where our board will vote on the grant. We have prepared resources and guidance to clarify the application process and streamline the steps for applying for our grants. Our aim is to help make the process as easy and efficient for you all as possible. We are committed to increasing the reach and accessibility of Conservancy grants and want to further engage local communities and support community-led efforts. Key resources on our website include the Grant Application Guide, a complete set of instructions which I'll go over in a minute, pre-application and full application templates, our technical assistance webpage, which has links to lots of resources like webinars on how to write a successful application, information you'll need to know to manage your grant if you receive one, and tips on meaningful community engagement, workforce development, and more. I also want to let you know that we have a grantee manual on our website. This provides very detailed description of how our grants work, and you don't need to read it all at the application stage, but there may be specific issues that you want to figure out. You can learn more about our program and priorities on our Wildfire Resilience Program website. Kostula mentioned earlier the governor's executive order, which was issued on March 1st. The emergency proclamation authorizes the secretaries of the California Natural Resources Agency and the California Environmental Protection Agency to suspend certain state of California statutory and regulatory requirements in order to expedite critical fuels reduction projects for projects that meet specific requirements and adopt the state's fuels reduction environmental protection plans, best management practices. This link, which I think one of my wonderful colleagues is putting in the chat, will guide you to more information about eligible projects, the required best management practices that need to be included in the projects, and how to file a suspension request. We have also have the resources to help assist applicants in navigating that process. Additionally, the regional managers and any staff are available to give feedback on initial project ideas to help determine eligibility and fit within the funding. The grant application guide provides a step-by-step instructions on completing a pre or full application for the Conservancy. The guide includes a full overview of our grant programs, the application steps, the templates to use, an application checklist to help make sure all required information is included in your submittals, a guidance on developing budgets and tasks, including eligible costs, and many additional resources to help make your application successful. The application guide goes through each question in the application and provides suggestions, guidance, and tips for how to answer each one. Be sure to dive into our strategic plan and our project selection criteria because these documents are what we use to rank your proposal and determine if it will be recommended for funding. Use the guide. It will save you time and make your application more competitive. Prior to preparing an application, there are some key grant requirements to be aware of, including these are reimbursable grants. You do the work first and then invoice the Conservancy monthly to quarterly. All grants must be authorized by the Conservancy Board. Please remember we only have 4 or 5 meetings each year, so you have to have allowed time for that process. After board authorization, a grant agreement is signed by Conservancy and the grantee. You need a resolution from your governing body to accept our grant and sign the grant agreement. You provide us with task-based work program and budget, including subcontractors. $2 million insurance coverage is typical, but we can get input per scale and activities. You can't start work under the grant until there is an agreement and all preconditions of the grant have been approved. If we determine that your project is eligible for funding, we will ask for a full application. I'm not going to go through the full application in detail here as we don't have time for that. The application will be about 10 pages, but there is no length requirement. Focus on being specific about what you plan to do, what your deliverables will be for each task. Top tip! Everything is explained in our application guide. Please look there. You can also reach out to us if you aren't sure about something in the application. We are happy to help, but it may take us a little bit of time to get back to you. All pre-application and full application submittals should be emailed to grants@scc.ca.gov. Conservancy staff will provide the appropriate regional manager and review process will begin. If you don't have Microsoft Word, download the template and open with a free program like Google Docs. Then download as a Word file and email the application. Please do not submit paper copies or more information than requested, such as PowerPoint presentations or letters of support. And make sure to keep a copy for your records. Send only items requested in the application checklist in the application guide. Do not send supplementary materials, please. Last but not least, thank you.
Thank you, Lily and Kastula. Now we will be moving into answering some of your questions, so please feel free to go ahead and enter them in the Q&A. I will stop sharing. And again, if we don't have time to get to all of the questions, we will be preparing a Q&A document and writing out our responses to all questions. So first, I'm going to go into the Q&A. And the first question we have is from Rick Mazzarella. We found that service providers for grant activities like fuel reduction, chipping, tree removal, etc., typically cannot wait extended periods of time to receive payment. Will grants be allowed in advance prior to performance of work or prompt payment of services? Yes, we will be allowing advance payments with the 2024 climate bond. We have updated our advance payment guidelines, and those are up on our website. And you will, if you're interested in that, you have to document that there is a cash flow need or a good justification for that. And so if you receive a grant from us, you can work with your project manager to determine if that program is a good fit for your grant. Next we have Joey, who said, can you show the grant application slide again? Yes. Let me do that. One sec. Actually, I'm not sure exactly which one. But regardless, we will be emailing the slides out and the recording. So I'm happy to do that, and you can look for more information on there. And maybe Taylor or anyone from Conservancy can put in our link in the chat of where we keep all the grant application guide and grantee memo or grantee manual. Okay. That one, thanks. Oh, good. Can funds be used to help fund home hardening in VHFSZ or to complete inspections in these zones? I'm not going to answer every question. I'm going to start handing it off. I'll let Lily answer that.
No, unfortunately, we do not fund home hardening in very high fire hazard zones or any other zones. We fund projects on public or protected land.
Great. Can you share the slide deck? Yes. Okay. Next from Robert, we have, are you open to block funding? i.e., can we apply on behalf of a cohort of smaller organizations that don't have the capacity to apply but are able to do the work? I'll hand that to Kastula.
We have done that in the past, so we're open to it. I encourage you to reach out and schedule a pre-application meeting with us so we can talk about it, make sure it's a good fit before you dive into doing a pre-app.
Yeah, we've definitely done it, but I would say it's not our standard operating. How do projects need to take place within SCC's geographic jurisdiction? Yes. Sorry, I had to reread that because I didn't read it exactly as it was written. Yes, all projects need to take place within our jurisdiction. Next, from Rick. We're finding that relying on volunteer-only organizations to pursue grants, execute projects, etc., is extremely challenging. We'd like to pursue grants that would likely involve staffing full-time contractors onto our Fire Safe Council. Are such grant applications likely acceptable by the Coastal Conservancy? I'll hand that one to Lily.
Yes, that's fine. We've done that in the past.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next we have one from Lisa. If a project fits the criteria for coastal resilience and flooding, but also has elements that meet the goals of the Wildfire Resilience Program, would a potential grantee apply under each program or one consolidated grant pre-application? You would apply using our pre-application and we will determine what program it's under. You do not have to worry about that. So we have one rolling grant application for coastal resilience and wildfire resilience. So it's the same exact process. Next, we have one from Lindsay Reeves. Can projects be implemented on private lands? And I'll hand that to Kastula.
So as Lily and I both said, we prioritize and focus on funding projects that benefit protected and public lands. If there is a project that will also provide that public good nexus, we will entertain it, but it has to be very obvious. And we are not open to just benefiting a private landowner and it not having that public good.
Thank you. All right, another one from Rick. Eligible expenses. I'm involved with the San Benito Fire Safe Council and FireWise communities in the area. We're finding it a challenge to inform the community of our efforts and encouraging residents to participate. Our bulk mailer campaigns an eligible expense for Coastal Conservancy grants. I'll hand this one to Lily.
Yes. We want you to reach out to the community in the best way you can. I appreciate that you're trying and that it's hard, like I do. So if you think that is the best way to communicate with your community, yeah.
All right, next we have one from Melissa. For prescribed fire or cultural burning, what about insurance coverage? Does this qualify, or is there an option to get indemnification from the state? I'm going to hand this one to Kastula.
You gave me the tough one.
I know.
So our grant agreements have insurance requirements, and we have indemnification clauses. For prescribed fire in particular, we have a clause that requires that you participate in the fund, the liability fund. Lily, is there anything you want to chime in?
The only thing I'd add is that we require you to have a burn boss if you are going to light a match.
Yeah, thank you for that.
All right. Teams does not do a great job of tracking the questions. So they're kind of mixed up, but I'm going to go back up to the top. I have one from Emily. You mentioned that the Coastal Conservancy is receiving nearly all the Prop 4 allocation for wildfire resilience this fiscal year. Does that mean all the money needs to be dispersed to grantees during the coming fiscal year? Do you anticipate there will be less funding available for wildfire resilience grants after FY 25-26? No. We will have typically, I actually don't know the exact amount, but typically we have 3 years to encumber funds, meaning we have 3 years to award grants, and then an additional 2 years. So in total, that'd be 5 years, and then an additional 2 years to spend the money. So receiving it in 24-25 means that we'd have to encumber by like 2027 and spend by 2029. The system in which we track all of this is still getting set up by Department of Finance and the State Controller's Office and our bond office. So we don't have all of those details worked out, but that is the typical range. Assuming that roadside fuels reduction on private land that benefits public egress and ingress would be eligible, yes? I'll hand that to Lily.
Yes, if you want to make sure that you show a big public benefit, like it's an evacuation route for this community and it's critical.
Great. Next from Kim, are matching funds required or recommended? Can previous investments into environmental compliance, such as a VTP, be considered part of the match? I'll hand this to Kastula.
So we definitely prioritize projects that have a match. It isn't required. Having your CEQA done is a requirement of our program, so I don't really see that as being a match. We can't take projects to our board unless CEQA findings have been identified.
Great. From Sarah, a similar question as before. If you're receiving all the wildfire money, I assume Sarah's talking about the wildfire money. If you're receiving all the wildfire funding this year, are you planning to distribute over the next 10 years or sooner? Sooner, within the next 3 to 5 years. All right, next we have one from Somnath. What is the typical duration of the projects and the chance of obtaining an extension? So typically, I believe these projects will need to be, if you're awarded a grant, you will need to spend the funds by 2029 and or sooner. And so basically your project manager will work with you to determine an appropriate length of time for your grant if it's sooner than 2029. And then if you need an extension prior to 2029, if say your grant agreement, the final date is 2027 and you need an extension because there's been delays and for whatever reason, you can work with your project manager and request an extension. However, we do have a hard deadline at that year that the money expires, which is 2029. Okay. Next, we have one from Joelle. Just to clarify, you do not provide funds for fuel reduction on private property, just for public. Correct. We primarily focus our work on public lands. And like Kustula said, there are rare instances where we work on private property, but it has to have an overall benefit to the public. But primarily we are working on projects in public lands, protected lands. All right, one from Michelle. Will you fund development of grazing projects for fuel reduction or just implementation? I'll hand this to Lily. I can't remember who went last.
Yeah, we would see grazing projects as implementation, and we have funded those in the past, and we would fund them in the future.
And I would say that also includes infrastructure. So if you need um, pipes to bring water to the animals with troughs and things like that, we can definitely pay for that. We've paid for fencing before. And in fact, we see that as priority projects because you're creating more of a sustainable program for grazing. And yeah, we like those.
Great. Next, we have one from Rachel. Would acquisition of a conservation easement in a WUI be considered an eligible project? Kustula.
I think that's me. Unfortunately, no, we don't use this funding for acquisitions.
Next, we have Deborah. Can one proposal cover work on multiple properties if it's the same landowner? Yes. Next, we have one from John. Will you accept applications for grants to prepare CEQA documents to enable local agencies to move immediately into vegetation management projects? So we, in order to provide a grant for any implementation project like vegetation management, we need CEQA to be done. So we can't bring a project to our board unless CEQA has been completed or is exempt. If you want to apply for a grant to prepare CEQA documents, that's an eligible planning grant from us. But as we mentioned in this webinar, we're prioritizing implementation projects for this funding.
I
Like
want to add.
Yeah.
We do have a consultant on a retainer contract for projects that do fit our priorities and help further our strategic plan where they can help CEQA, get the CEQA coverage and other projects, or look into the governor's executive order for suspension of those things. So please reach out and we'd be happy to chat.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Lily. Do you fund CEQA surveys and permitting? Is there an allowable amount for planning for an implementation project? I think we just covered that. We don't have any caps for any of our grants. And we do fund CEQA work generally. But again, prioritizing implementation projects and projects can use the governor's emergency proclamation and work with our retainer contractor if you need support. Noelle, which data source should we consult to identify disadvantaged communities? There are a variety of websites and tools that can be used. I like to use the State Parks Finder. That one, the definition of disadvantaged communities aligns with the bond definition for the 2024 climate bond. And California Natural Resources Agency will be providing a list of tools shortly that folks can use. But if you need any more support, please reach out and I can provide some more options. Sarah, do you have a map of DAC/SDAC communities in the state of California? I just answered that. Another one from Hugh. Can the funding be used for land acquisition? We already answered this one too. But I'll finish the question. Okay. Land for acquisition, fee, or conservation easement. If an applicant is able to demonstrate that conservation of a property will provide wildfire resilience benefits. No. Next, we have one from Dan. With the Prop 4 funding carved out for the California Conservation Corps, are local conservation corps eligible to submit proposals for specific projects? Yes. You mentioned that the Conservancy was moving forward moving towards prioritizing larger grants. Should grantees with smaller scale projects under 250K look elsewhere? I'll let Kostula answer that one.
I would say probably yes. I mean, we are really looking for some larger scale, larger projects for this funding. And Evan, would it be helpful if we archive some of these so you're not jumping all over to figure out which ones have been answered? I can do that if that's helpful.
Yeah, I was just worried that it would mess up our record at the end because I want to download them all and answer.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay,
know.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it as is then. Sorry.
Okay. But please let me know if I'm missing huge swaths of questions. All right, another one from Anna. Thank you so much for this overview. Confirm. You said public agencies that can apply include federal agencies, correct? Correct. Another question from Hockey. Will there be any further guidelines updates related to Prop 4? Could an applicant apply for multiple SCC programs funded by Prop 4? Yes, we have a one rolling grant application for our Prop 4 funding, and we will determine which program it's best under. So there will not be other further guidelines updates for Prop 4 at this point in time. All right, Brian, if we have already secured other grant funds and spent some of them on a project, can we still consider those funds match on this application, assuming that they weren't counted as matches somewhere else? I would say yes. Next, Bridget, what is the timeline for the grant to be used? Is it possible to have more than one grant open with SCC if there is a need for more projects over the span of overlapping time? Yes. Henry, we have submitted project proposals to the Diablo Fire Safe Council as a part of the RPP process. Those may go to various agencies for funding. If one fits your guidelines, can we apply directly to you, even though we might see it on the RPP list? I can't remember who went last. Kostula?
I would say yes. And I'm going to let Lily chime in as well.
I would say yes. When we mentioned what we're looking to do is we're going to implement plans. So it's great that you have an idea that is implementing a plan like the RPP.
Great. All right, we'll have this one's for me. Since I deal with a lot of administrative stuff. All right, Michael said, is there a cap on indirect? So the Coastal Conservancy is in the process right now of updating our guidance on and our requirements on indirect cost rates based on the language that was in the climate bond. The climate bond outlines 4 options, and we will be allowing those 4 options. We just have to figure out how to implement them and what charges those rates can be applied to. So we're developing that now, but if you don't know, the rates are a federal de minimis, which is 15%, a federal NICRA, so a federally negotiated indirect cost rate with the federal government we would accept. And those ones are easier to implement because the NICRA letter actually outlines what the rate is allowed to be applied to, what charges. And then the other 2 rates we're going to combine in the Conservancy. One is a rate that's been accepted by another state agency. That doesn't really matter to us. The 4th rate is a rate that the grantee has determined and put in their grant application. So we're kind of lumping whether it's with another state agency or we just consider that a rate than another that the grantee has developed on their own. So guidance will be coming soon about that. We are in the throes of updating. All right, next from Joey. Can you show the grant application slide again? Oh, I already did that one. Okay.
Yeah, I think you did that one.
So now I'm back at the top. All right. Another question. Do you provide web support if the project's outcome is a dashboard that continuously monitors and alerts for management tasks even after the project tenure? I'll let Lily answer this.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Angel, is there a shapefile of the lands in California that are within the Coastal Conservancy's jurisdiction? Unfortunately, the only shapefile we have is out of date, but I'm still happy to send it to you because it has the coastal draining watersheds and the Bay program, but it doesn't have the Santa Ana River program. So if you want to reach out to us, I'm happy to share that with you, but we can work within all coastal draining watersheds, which is easily available to find online. Another one from Angel. Thank you for the example of improving evacuation routes. Can you provide more examples of how treatment on private protected lands, example, nonprofit preserves, can provide sufficient public benefit? I'll hand this to Kastula.
Sure. When projects are adjacent to protected lands, and so the work done on the private land clearly benefits the resources on the public and protected land, that is something we would consider. It's the one that really jumps out at me. And I guess we're open to talking. So if you have an idea, then come talk to us and then we can walk through it and see if it really fits.
Great. All right, another one from Michelle. Will having an open ETC grant be an issue in applying for this funding? No, you can have multiple Coastal Conservancy grants at the same time. That is fine. All right, another one from Scott. How about bundling multiple small projects? I'll give that to Lily.
Sure. Yeah, I think as long as each small project meets our criteria and furthers our strategic objectives and all the good stuff we're looking for.
Yep. All right. Did I already do this one from Angel? I'm not sure. It sounds like planning costs like CEQA can't be included in an implementation grant, but that planning grants could fund this activity but are not prioritized for this round. In other words, we cannot mix planning and implementation activities in one per proposal, right? Correct. If you're CEQA exempt, you could. So projects that beyond this order from the governor, because for the order from the governor, you need to submit your request to be CEQA exempt and be exempt from permits within 2025. And so we're thinking that those projects would be much farther along and pretty ready for implementation. You have to implement within, help me out, Kastula.
I believe it's October 2026. You have to start and you have 2 years.
Right. So projects that don't fit that criteria, yes, we could provide a grant for planning and implementation if it's exempt from CEQA. All right, next we have Michelle. Is there a minimum acreage you're looking for? Let Lily answer that.
No, we targeted the dollar amount 1 to 3 million because costs really vary up and down our jurisdiction.
All right, back at the top. One from Audrey. How do you find out if you're CEQA exempt? Is there an application for it? I'll let Kastula answer that one.
If you aren't sure, then I would suggest reaching out to us and maybe we can work with Montrose to figure out if there is a pathway for you that currently exists with exemptions, or if you need some more documentation before you can come to us for implementation funding.
Yeah, Montrose is our contractor, the retainer contract we mentioned earlier that can support our potential grantees and grantees. Another one, oh no, we already read that one. One from Allison. If we are proposing to support local PBAs and prescribed cultural fire workforce development, is it best if implementation is explicit component of the proposal, or is investing in the capacity building and workforce development, which will indirectly lead? Let Lily answer that.
Yes. Please focus on implementation.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Did I miss any questions? I was doing my best, but They were kind of bouncing around.
Oh, I found one from Deborah. I'll read it. Can salaries or other expenses cover a 2 or 3 year period? And I asked earlier, but I might have gotten lost. Can multiple properties be included if not adjacent, but same project area and same landowner? Yes, salaries and expenses can be included, um, and multiple properties can be included, regardless of if they're the same landowner or not. We do need a landowner agreement for each project and property that we have. Mary also asked if our project combines wildfire resilience with cultural restoration activities. Are there specific metrics or outcomes the Conservancy prioritizes when evaluating projects with multiple benefits? I would
I would,
say, yeah, give our selection criteria a good thorough read.
yes, our project selection criteria. What about workforce trainings open to the public, but the class itself is on private lands? Would that qualify? Kostula?
So,
I
and
would,
I think, what are we doing at the training? I guess that would be my question. Are we potentially improving the land for the private landowner? My instinct says maybe, but I think I need more details.
yeah, and we'd be happy if you want to reach out with specific project ideas to work through that with you. I mean, if you're doing these trainings and then a different component of the project is then going and doing the work on public lands, obviously that would be eligible. But if the project is just these trainings on private lands, that needs more conversation.
I see a question from Ashkan. It says, from what I've seen, many of SCC supported projects seem more operational or implementation focused. Am I understanding that correctly? And how does SCC view proposals that are more focused on predictive planning or data driven model development? Also, do proposals and community engagement efforts need to be strictly within the coastal areas like the 9 Bay Area counties down to Santa Clara River, or is there flexibility in nearby inland wildfire prone regions? So lots of questions there. And I'll jump in, and if you guys want to chime in. The funding for Prop 4 is really implementation focused, so you're right there. We are not prioritizing predictive planning or data modeling right now. There are tools that the state has to help like work on treatment development, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're talking about. And then our jurisdiction is coastal draining watersheds. So if it's a coastal draining watershed, then we can do work there.
And before that, Carla asked if firefighting equipment is allowed, such as a water tender. And I would say, yes, we do like to do equipment purchases.
Great.
Any?
All right. Taylor, Kostula, or Lily, are there any else we missed?
We just had one that says, do you find community education around home hardening and evacuation routes? I would say probably not, because we're looking at implementate. We're really focused on implementation.
Could the lead be located in a coastal draining watershed, but a sub under the grant not be located on one? Yes, but I would say the work that's being done on the ground needs to be in the coastal draining watershed. We don't really care if the organization is necessarily outside of it or a subcontractor. All right. Give it a couple minutes. We have 5 minutes left in our time together. but questions are slowing down. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions come in. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, we will share the slides, the recording of this webinar, a Q&A document, all on our website. Please feel free to reach out with us if you have other project ideas or questions. We're happy to answer. And I just saw one come in. Can we use CalVTP? Yes, definitely. All right. Would roadway improvement design on roads parallel to Highway 1 qualify if they are to provide alternate evacuation routes? Roadway improvement designs.
Yeah, what does that mean? I guess I need to know what that means.
Yeah, we're happy to talk more.
More details.
Okay. All right. I don't see additional questions coming in. Thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate you coming. What a great turnout. Have a great day.